Okay, this section is the last of the derivative rules that you need to memorize. It is the inverse trig function derivative rules. Now, unfortunately, they are one of the hardest to memorize, and they are the least to occur on the actual AP exam. You never know, so we have to go through them. Okay, so you have your inverse sine or your arc sine. 1 over the square root, so you can read through these. That's a negative 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared. So notice this is a positive 1, this is a negative 1. Okay. Tangent and cotangent. Well, of course, there's a typo there. That is a negative. So let's make sure that we get the negative in there. Okay. And then you have arcsecant and cosecant, again, negative. So negative, 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 these are positive, positive, positive. Okay, so maybe that will help you out a little bit. Okay, this is the general rule if you're taking the arc sine of x. This is if you're taking the arc trig functions of something other than x. So we have the derivative rule times the correction factor. The derivative rule times the correction factor. Okay, so put those on note cards, try to memorize them, and let's learn how to use them. Okay, so if I were to ask you to find the derivative of this without using an inverse trig function, how would we do that? Well, one of the things that we know is that the inverse sine can be undone by taking the sine of both sides. So the sine, and remember this notation, arc sine or inverse sine of x, arc sine or arc sine, same thing. So these two undo each other, if you recall. So we have the sine of y equals x. So now we can take the derivative now. Because we know the derivative rule for sine is cosine of u times u prime. The derivative of x is 1. So y prime equals 1 over the cosine of y. Well, what is the cosine of y? Well, let's take a look at our picture over here. Okay, this is our angle y right here. We know the sine is x over 1. That's what was given. So if we do Pythagorean theorem, that gives us our adjacent side, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So let's take the cosine of y off of our picture here. The cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So the cosine of y is the square root of 1 minus x squared. So y prime, the derivative of arc sine, which is what you just calculated. The derivative of arc sine. And check up here, and it matches. So that's the long way of doing it, in case you forget. If you don't memorize the formulas, I wouldn't recommend that, but let's try it one more time here. The long way of doing the arc sine. So if we have, color here, we have y equals, I just prefer to write it this way. It's just personal preference. So I can take the sine of both sides. I can take the derivative now with respect to x. So that is cosine of u times u prime equals 2. So y prime equals 2 divided by the cosine of y. Well, we have to go to our picture here. It's not going to be the same picture because the given here was that the sine is equal to x. That's what arc sine means. So this is saying the sine of our angle We'll call that angle Y. The sine is 2x over 1. That's what's given in the original problem. So if I do Pythagorean theorem, it's going to be c squared minus a squared equals b squared. So this side ends up being the square root of 1 minus 2 squared. I'm sorry, 2x squared, which is the 2x, the quantity squared, I'm sorry, which is 4x squared. So we have just found that the derivative of arc sine is 2 times the cosine on the picture is 1 minus 4x squared. So that's doing it the long way. Again, this means an angle whose sine is x. This means an angle whose sine is 2x. Okay? But let's use the derivative rule instead. Okay, let's use the derivative rule. So if we're going to take the derivative of arc sine of 2x, okay, so again, here's notation. The derivative of the inverse. Okay, so this is the u right here. So if we use the derivative rule, it's 1 over the square root of 1 minus our u squared times the derivative of u. And that gives me 2 over the square root of 1 minus 4x squared. Same answer. So I recommend using the derivative rule. So let's go ahead and try the derivative rule on this one. Go ahead, stop the video and try it yourself. Okay, the derivative of inverse tan of u. Okay, when you have it memorized, inverse tan is 1 over 1 plus u squared times the derivative of u. So your answer is 3 over 1 plus 9x squared. Okay, go ahead and try C. I would again stop the video and come back and check your answer. Okay, let's see how you did. The derivative, the inverse tan derivative, we just did that one. It's 1 over 1 plus your u squared times the derivative of your u. So I'm going to put on the side just to make it a little bit easier. The derivative of our u is the square root rule. So your answer is top times top. This is going to be 2 square roots of x. And over here we have what? 1 plus x. So no need to do the long way if you have the rules memorized. Alrighty. Challenge problem. Go ahead and stop the video and see if you can do that. Alright, here we go. I see a lot of things. I see 4 functions in here. I see a square, I see an inverse trig function, I see an exponential function, and I see a linear function. So that sounds like not double chain, but triple chain? Yeah, 4 functions. That would be a triple chain problem. So go ahead and give it a shot if you haven't, and then come back. Try it on your own. All right, welcome back. Fun problem here. Fun. Okay, we're going to start with the outside. We're going to use the derivative rule, the power rule. So it's 2 times the inverse secant of e to the 2x raised to the first power. So it's 2 times our u raised to the first power times the derivative of our u, which is inverse secant of e to the 2x. So all of that is our u. So we already did this, so let's just carry that down with us. And let's go ahead and find the derivative of this. Well, this is, again, this is got a lot going on here. So let's pick the outer function, which is our inverse secant, or our arc secant. So the rule for arc secant is 1 over the absolute value of our u. This is our u, times the square root of u squared minus 1 times the derivative of our u, times the derivative of our u. You can either write derivative of our u down here and then keep going, or can you now do this in your head? The derivative of our u. This is a chain rule. E to a different u times the derivative of our u. So your final answer, let's see here. If you got 2 times 2 on the top, so that gives you a 4. This absolute value is going to be positive, so we're going to divide it by this one. So those are going to cancel. And you're left with arc secant of e to the 2x, all divided by the square root of e. That is power of a power, so you multiply them together, and there's your final answer. And if you got that, good job. Triple chain, good job. And that is practice of the inverse trig rules. And I will give you some more.